So I will start today with the presentations of, let's say, my part of my research interests. And later on, I think there will be 5 or 6 more professors, ITT researchers coming here to present their topics as well. And as you see, many know that already, of course, from the first semester. My topics for each of my research topics, where your master's thesis could be linked to, are actually shown with one figure. And the first figure shows the first topic, which is very basic research, actually. The only part which is basic research is on Holocene landscape evolution and environmental change. I will explain what that means. The second block is on everything related to ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction and adaptation. And I put the mangrove for that, coastal buffer, you know. Then assessment of ecosystem services, and I have a colleague here from Brazil who is working with us on one project related to that, Antonio Soares from Rio de Janeiro. And our Project 2 group, we have the chance to meet later on for a beer, cervejinha. And finally, the socio-ecological systems, and maybe that is a bit surprising, cultural heritage as well. So I will explain a bit what we are doing, what I'm doing there. First of all, the Holocene landscape evolution. So what I did always in my slides, I quickly show you which methods we use. Then I also put all the publications, because maybe some of you is interested before choosing a topic on one of the publications to get an idea what we are doing. Just ask me and I can upload the respective publications. Yeah? So in this landscape evolution environmental change part, we are working with so-called landscape archives, the different things you see in the landscape, and I think some of you will also go with us to the Lower Sieg and see how that works, working on landscapes, and ecological indicators. And to make that a bit more visible, so what we did in the past is actually analyzing soils and soil archives to reconstruct landscape history. And we applied for one project which we hope to get. It's called DRY-TIP, Socio-Ecological Tipping Points in Drought-Prone Transition Zones of the Mata Atlantica. And if we should get that project, that will be announced probably within the next 4 weeks. Then we have another big project in Brazil, where also Lars Ribbe, Sabine Schlüter, Claudia Redig are working. So cross your fingers, chances are 50%. And in that case, we would work on ecological indicators, termite mounds. So the Africans, I'm pretty sure they know about that. For Brazil, it's not so much research on that. So what do termite mounds say in terms of land degradation and in terms of changing from a forest to a savanna ecosystem? That is really pure basic research. If we get the project and anyone should be interested, just let me know. And then we have the second one, which is more applied and I guess also more interesting for most of the students here. It's ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction and adaptation. So methods are assessing risk and vulnerability potentials for nature-based solutions using various methods from natural and social sciences. Later you can ask. I present first, okay? Yes, termite mounds. Termite mounds, yes. Mm-hmm. And the relationship between land degradation and risk. So that is the second big topic. We actually focus on coastal environments, on mountain forests, here particularly on landslide risk, and on so-called ecotones, which are transition zones between 2 different biomes. And in that area, we published already a lot in different countries. That means, for instance, in Mexico, we had some research. Of course, in Brazil, everyone knows that. I'm focusing pretty much on Brazil. But we had also some other countries where we worked on that, for instance, in the Andes regions of Peru, and also, let me see where I have that here, in coastal areas of Vietnam, Chile, Indonesia. So this ecosystem-based adaptation and disaster risk reduction is actually a big topic, and also other researchers are working in that topic as well. We have also proposed a project. It's called Periwater, also together with Lars Ribbe. We hope we get that as well. It would be in Peru and in Chile, and probably also in Bolivia. So we applied for 3 countries. Let's see what we get. And another project which we actually applied for is in Chile and Vietnam. I currently supervise also a PhD student, Tere Arce. Those who were in my risk module know her already. She's working in Mexico, developing a methodological approach for ecosystem vulnerability in Mexico. And she would, of course, be happy if she has a master student working with her, because then it would be like a co-benefit for her PhD, and the other way around for your masters. And what she's doing, I just put some figures, what she already developed. She's trying to develop, based on the different states of Mexico, a risk map with risk indices. And what is new in her research and what she wants to include is in how far does the degradation of ecosystems increase risk? And how can we put that into such a map? That is the main question, actually, she's asking. And then we have a cooperation in northern Argentina with the University of Resistencia. Just 2 students came back from there, and they work on land use changes, particularly from forest to soybean production and other intensive systems, and what are the consequences for land degradation. So we had 4 students actually in Argentina, 2 of them working there, and 2 others working a bit further south in the Pampas region with Jackson and with me. So Argentina would therefore also be an option. Hi, Josh. And then we have a long cooperation already in central Vietnam with Hue University, where I particularly focus on coastal ecosystems. That means coastal dunes and mangroves, which are getting destroyed because we have aquaculture systems, we have oil exploitation, etc. And the question is, how can we, first of all, conserve or protect these ecosystems, or even go a step ahead and restore these kind of ecosystems? And then we also had a project in Rio. It's about in how far can we implement protection forests in steep slopes in favelas. So who wants to see a favela from inside? That could also be an option. Antonio is already laughing. You don't have to be scared, actually. No worries. So the third part, the third big block, is assessment of ecosystem services. Methods are geographical field methods, soil vegetation mapping, but also GIS modeling. That means, for instance, we used INVEST model from Stanford University. The foci are on coastal environments, mountain forest, and again, ecotone, so the same focal regions, actually. We have several publications. The last one is from a student of the last generation, Roshan. He really made it to get his master's thesis part of it, the first part published, in a good journal, which is not the general case, but very good. And some others. And we have this ongoing project with Antonio Soares from the State University of Rio. And it's also together with Embrapa, which is the state agency for agricultural management in Brazil. And we are focusing on assessing soil-related ecosystem services. That means qualitatively, if possible, also to quantify these services and to develop maybe also maps for some sub-watersheds, which ecosystem services are provided and where are trade-offs between different ecosystem services. That is the basic idea. And again, we have dry tip. If we get it, then we can even have more students. The Thesis project has at least money for 1 student going there for field research completely paid. So that is at least one incentive we have, right? More than nothing. I mean, 2 months in Brazil and you get the flight paid and also something for accommodation. It's not so bad, actually. And then I also supervise a PhD student together with Antonio. Therefore, it's co-supervision because Antonio is the first supervisor. And Gabriel, he is coming next week. So who should be interested working in Brazil, maybe with Antonio, with Gabriel, just let me know and we can have a meeting with him as well. And he can explain a bit about his PhD thesis. So what we did so far in ecosystem service assessment, so we did qualitative assessments. For instance, I put here the example of Chile. So we assessed all the services of coastal dune systems in 1 region in Chile, Valparaiso, in 1 region in central Vietnam, Hue, and in 1 region of Indonesia, which is the central Indonesian part of Java. Then we did also quantitative measurements, in particular carbon. So we assessed biomass and soil carbon of mangrove ecosystems in an archipelago, islands of central Indonesia, and we published already some results. And that is what the master student last year did, Roshan. He used 1 model, INVEST model, to assess ecosystem service trade-offs in Kalimantan. So maybe some of you have heard about the problem of palm oil plantations and deforestation. So he made land use land cover changes, analysis, and then put into these different scenarios the concept of ecosystem services. So how will the ecosystem services change as the result of land use changes, and what does that mean? for the different land uses. That was his proposal, actually. And finally, and now we come to the last block where I'm in, and that is social ecological systems and cultural heritage. Methods, in that case, again, geographical field methods, soil vegetation mapping, ecological indicators, but also empirical methods, household surveys, expert interviews, participatory mapping, focal group interviews, discussions, etc. So that goes more also into social sciences. That is that part. Foci are on coastal environment, coastal dunes and mangroves is one focus, forest ecosystems, but also here dryland ecosystems, and again the transition zones. And again, we have several publications, so you can take a look. So I worked particularly in that field in Kenya in the past, and also in Ecuador. And currently, we have one project, so we always bring students to Morocco, and that will be also the case this year. So 3 of you, and we will announce that, can go to Morocco to join our project in Project 3, Student Project 3. And the project is called the Atlas Workshop of Agdis, which is in the Anti-Atlas Mountains of Morocco. And here we are working on cultural scientific dialogue. So we are working together with the University of Music and Dance from Cologne, and together with 2 universities from Morocco on how can we preserve cultural heritage, how can we use music and dance to transport traditions over different generations. Completely different thing, I know, but very interesting. Yeah, this is the, oh, now you wake up, that's good. That is the oasis here. We're working, and we have also hosts over there, so we're working with communities. But unfortunately, we have only the money for 3 students. No? So maybe if there are voluntary students, of course, they can come join, but money is for 3 students only. Right? And then the last thing is also a bit exotic. I'm also supervising one PhD student, Silke. And Silke, she was also, like you, a student 3 years ago. And she is a violin maker. And I told you that, right? And we came just back from where she presented her research. And people are getting more and more interested because it's not about violins only. For almost all instruments, you need woods which are protected, timber which is protected from different ecosystems, actually. It is here shown the violin. And the question is, of course, how will, for example, the protection of pau-brasil, which is a national tree of Brazil, is completely protected. You cannot cut it anymore. So, but you need that one for the strings of violin bows. So it's actually contradicting the idea of traditional bow making, which is a huge problem. And it's explained by one of, maybe some of you know him, he's very popular in Germany, doesn't matter, a violin player from Germany. And he explained why only this wood can be used for classical music. And Silke, she's actually then focusing on the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. So that means we have in very different cultures, different instruments which can only be built by this protected wood species. And on the other hand, most of these wood species come from Brazil, come from Madagascar. Both are biodiversity hotspots, and both are also UNESCO World Natural Heritage Sites. And some come from India as well. But her focus is, again, on Brazil in her first phase of her PhD, and in the second phase she will move to Madagascar and probably to Tanzania. So that is actually my overview, and now you can ask whatever you want. Thank you. I know it's a lot, but but the topics are quite well linked, no worries. Yeah, Andrea.
Are you referring to any of the projects and ecosystem services payment or?
Yes, but so far we actually, I will show you that in our course, Ecosystem Management and Conservation. We had one PhD student, Vanessa, she was from Bolivia, working in Brazil. And she, I think I put also, let me see, because we published also a paper, that one here, Scoping Land Use-Based Watershed Management Options in Guapi-Macacu region. There is the only project where we tried to monetize these values with opportunity costs for the farmers on the one hand, you know that? And also the avoided costs for the water company in that case. So we have one project, but actually our idea was also in the Thesis project to monetize ecosystem services, if we can get that far. Yes.
system of ecosystem service, there are the maps of the land use changes.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
You said that the student who's done that, he also, or he or she? He.
Roshan.
He also assumed a way of the pattern to be reversed.
Yeah. Actually, in West, they have a model which can be adapted to different types of landscapes, right? First of all. And the idea is that you make scenarios for the future for the land use change. And to get the information, you have to do expert interviews. With these expert interviews, you get the idea how will the land change because of property rights, land tenure, let's say it like that. Property rights is more tricky. Because of planned infrastructure like roads, highways. Exactly. So you actually make scenarios, for instance, for 2030 and say in the next 15 years, the land might change as shown in our land use map. And then you focus on key ecosystem services and biodiversity. So you say food production, for instance, you say habitats in that case, and carbon sequestration. And then you try to calculate the trade-offs between, on the one hand, food production, and on the other hand, what you lose by deforestation, carbon sequestration, storage, and biodiversity. And then you try also to balance that. And you can, of course, monetize if you're economist.
I thought the idea about it is like because there's a land use changes and
Yeah.
he came up with new practices that return the...
No. The idea is more to say what would be the trade-offs in the future when we change from a current system to baseline, which is business as usual. So it's projected simply what is happening right now to the future. But if we change, for example, to conservation, to a greener scenario or green business scenario, he called him in the final publication, he said business as usual, conservation, opportunistic, and green growth. So that is actually for the policymakers to rethink their strategies. That is the idea behind. Yep.
If we come up with a topic on our own that fits into basically
Sure.
into your topic,
Sure.
it's not related to one of the projects specifically because it's maybe in some different country, we can also.
Of course, and we always discuss, particularly with Johannes, if it goes more to the social side, we always discuss and say maybe it's better with you, I make co-supervisor. With Sabine, if it goes more to economic side, we always go and say, okay, we do maybe the land use change and Sabine does more the economic part. That is always possible, sure. Yep. Yep.
In your environment, that's what it's called.
Here, environment, soil, vegetation. What? Socio-ecological, yes. I'm also social, I guess. At least a little. Anyone else? Any questions, ideas? If not, of course, I already uploaded it to Elias, the presentation. You can ask, and if you want to have one of the papers, most of them are freely available, others not, then just ask me and I send it.